Welcome to our first virtual Supporting the Vision meeting. This meeting is for family members, it's for parents, it's for guardians, anyone who has a high schooler in their home and you are interested in supporting your high schooler on their journey beyond high school, whether that be to college, into the workforce, into wherever their career may lead them. We are here to hopefully support you and teach you about some of their options and about some of the things that we are doing on campus for your students. So before we get too far into things, I do want to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. I'll start first and then we can go maybe Janine, Crispus, Kim. My name is Daniela Susnara and I work in the Division of Community Affairs. I am related to a program called Vision Days, and we're going to talk about that more in a second, but that is how I've come to you and you found us is because your student probably participates in Vision Days, and we are looking to better support parents of students who are in the state of Alabama and helping them go on to college, even if that's not at UA. So making sure that you have all the resources and up-to-date information that you need to support your high school student. And I'll turn it over to Janine.
Good evening. My name is Janine McGee, and I am an assistant director in UA Early College. So we work with students that are in high school that want to get a head start and get started on their college credit. And we will talk about that a little bit more.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Crispus Saxon. I'm an in-state recruiter for the University of Alabama, and I'm here to relay any of the admissions questions and the thoughts that are behind and come from that point of view this evening. Glad to have you here.
Greetings. My name is Kim Sterrett. I serve as the Director of Parent and Family Programs at the University of Alabama, and traditionally, our office connects with parents and family members of undergraduate UA students. And so I'm here to provide the perspective from the parent and family lens so that you can know what you're looking for from the shoes that you sit in and to give you some insights into what you can expect yourself. So thanks so much for being here. We're excited to have you.
Great. And so with that, we are going to jump into the presentation that we have shared for you all. We are going to have a PowerPoint, but we do want this to be conversational. So if you have questions and you're listening live, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will answer them in real time. We are going to make this available after the fact. So even if you're listening, a few days from now, please still comment and we will make sure that we get to those questions, and we will either comment directly on YouTube or we will find you and send you an email and make sure that you get the answers to those questions. So that being said, we are going to start. So this is our first information session, I would say, of a little fall mini series. So we are going to have 3 of these. This is our first one. We'll have one next week and on the 21st and one following on the 28th. But today we really want to talk about just kind of an orientation to what this Supporting the Vision is and what to expect as your student goes through high school. We thought that a really good place to start would be to discuss what is Vision Days. So like I said, this is what brought you all here. Hopefully this is the program that your student is participating in. And so what Vision Days is it really is a college preparedness program for 9th through 12th grade students. So we start reaching out to your high school counselors, principals, assistant principals, career and tech coaches, any teachers who handle dual enrollment, early college. We connect with all those people and we really encourage them to start bringing your high school students onto campus or onto virtual visits as early as 9th grade. And so once they're on campus with us, we move through a curriculum that's really tailored to the grade that they're in. And so what we're hoping to do is we're hoping to provide you with some of that same information that they're going to be receiving in their sessions this school year, just because when they come home and tell you about what they learned, we want you to make sure that, 1, they are telling you accurate information, and 2, you can support them with the information that you learn as well. So, for example, we started our virtual Vision Days for seniors today. We'll have another one tomorrow. And then starting next week, we'll be bringing about 600 high school seniors onto campus from different high schools around the state. So we have schools up as far north as Russellville, as far south as Mobile, all the way out to Lochapoka, and then opposite that, Lamar County. So we really are trying to reach every student across the state. And if you did stumble upon this and your high school student is not attending Vision Days, or you haven't heard about a Vision Days type field trip, please reach out to me, and I would love to get in contact with your counselor. I'm not going to go too far into the curriculum right now because we're going to discuss that a little bit more as we go through the session. But we really do want these supporting the vision sessions to just cement and create a foundation for the information that we are giving your students on campus. So right now we are doing these virtually because we just came out of virtual times, and we know that everyone is really familiar with finding YouTubes and finding links, and that is one of the best ways to get information out to a lot of people. But in the future, we really do hope that this can become something where we come out to your community and we share this information to, you know, maybe your PTO group or your high school senior parents night or things like that. So that is the direction that we're going and where we hope to see it go. Like I said, this is our first of 3 sessions. So next week we'll be following up with financial aid and paying for college. And then our 3rd and final mini session on September 28th will be a campus tours and questions to ask during that college selection process. So with that being said, we do want to cover just some higher ed lingo that we are going to be throwing around in these mini sessions, because there are so many different types of topics when we talk about college. We do want to make sure that we are clear in what we're discussing and it makes sense. And if you need to ask questions, you feel like you could articulate those in a way that you feel comfortable. So I am going to just kind of ask my partners to jump in as they feel needed, but we do want to talk about degree paths first. So like I said, we know that UA might not be for everyone. UA, where it falls on here, you know, is a large 4-year public institution. So we have a lot of students. We offer a bachelor's degree. We also offer graduate school. So we have master's degrees, we have doctorate degrees, we have professional certificates. So we have all of that housed at UA, but we know that that might not be for every student. So for example, there are 2-year options at junior colleges, and we also have trade schools. For example, in just Tuscaloosa alone, we share a city with Shelton State Community College, as well as Stillman, which is a 4-year HBCU. So there really are different degree paths for your student. And part of this session and part of what we hope to help families is find what path is best for your student. Going right into a big 4-year public institution with, you know, 30,000 plus students when they're 18 years old might not be the best fit. So we do know that everyone's path is going to look a little bit different, and depending on who they are and what their goals are and just what they're comfortable with is really going to indicate that path. So we do know, we do know about all of these. Just because we're from UA doesn't mean that we're only going to talk about 4-year institutions. So we could answer questions beyond that. But we do just want to make sure that we know that there are different paths for everyone.
And then when it comes to where it says colleges, you might also see different universities. It might be termed as schools, but that really is where the degrees and majors and minors and all the other things below it are kind of housed. Early college enrollment is separate, but the curriculum and all those things are housed within the college. So it's like at the University of Alabama, we have 8 undergraduate colleges of study: the College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Communications and Information Sciences, etc. Other schools might have like the School of Science, School of Business, things of that nature. So you really just want to, we found when were speaking with the students, we were asked what school do you want to be a part of, or what college do you want to be a part of, and they would list off like actual universities and 4-year colleges. When we were we were referring to actual the main core the main subject that goes along with those majors that go underneath it.
Yeah, so really quickly, I'll touch on what is early college and mostly what is dual enrollment. Dual enrollment is something that you will hear broadly, especially when your students are in high school. The short version about what is dual enrollment is taking college courses while you're still in high school. That's the short version. There's lots of other ways. There's lots of other things that can go into it as well. Why would you do that? Why would you go ahead and get started? The dual enrollment programs can be a significant cost savings for your family. If there's more than one child possibly enrolling at the same time, it can be a significant cost savings. And depending on the program that the university that your student is doing that dual enrollment through, it can also count for dual credit, which in my world is a little different. It sounds almost the same, but that means that if they take, say, a history course through one of the universities, if there's a certain agreement in place in the state of Alabama, it can count for their high school history for that year, as well as also earning them 3 or 4 hours of college credit ahead of time as well. So you do it because it's a great head start. It can be a serious cost savings for your family to do that. And it's a great head start on getting adjusted to college level academics.
I think that's a really good point, Janine. And we're about to kind of go into that freshman bit and what to prepare for. But before we do that, I know that we do have some viewers. So if you have questions as we work through these terms or as we start to go through the timeline, please drop them in the chat. We have someone watching the chat, so we will make sure that we answer them. I know there's about a 30 to 60-second lag, so we might answer it a second later, but please don't be afraid to use the chat. Another fun fact that I just wanted to throw out there, Crispus was mentioning the colleges. So for example, we have, the College of Business, we have Arts and Science, we have Communication and Information Sciences. When students are choosing those majors and minors, they might pair differently within those colleges. So for example, there might be a business major who is minoring in Spanish, and that, Spanish degree would fall within Arts and Sciences. So just because students have different interests doesn't mean that those colleges don't collaborate. So our different college advisors and even recruiters who your student might talk to while they're on campus, they know how those majors and minors pair together. For example, I know that the College of Arts and Science and the business school like to joke that they play well together. So just keep in mind that just because a student might be picking a college, just because they say, they want to be an engineering major, that doesn't mean that they are stuck in the College of Engineering. They can still branch out into those different colleges to pick their minors or even double major or things like that. And then we're going to kind of talk about that preparation that Janine started to touch on. So like she said, getting a head start for your students is extremely important. And I know that some high schools they have a person who is designated to dual enrollment and helps students do that. But Janine, could you talk a little bit more about where they can find those resources or how they can make those connections if they're interested in getting their student started?
Absolutely. So even if if your school does not have a designated dual enrollment counselor, a lot of times it's either going to be the college counselor or it could even be their grade counselor. So if it's a school where there's a 9th grade counselor or a 10th grade counselor, just have them go to their counselor and ask the questions. Also, if there's any confusion about it, you're welcome to reach out to us. Our staff has pretty regular communication with almost all of the high school counselors in the state and several beyond. So if there's any confusion or questions that we can help with along the way, our staff is happy to do that. A couple of quick points. So sometimes you talk about AP courses and they can count, once you get your test scores on that, they can count for college credit. And the dual enrollment can also count for college credit. Specifically with our program, UA Early College, students can begin taking UA courses through our program as soon as they've completed the 9th grade. They may have to wait until junior year to take that specific AP course. So again, if you're really looking at getting ahead and trying to use your time wisely, it may be beneficial to go ahead and take some of these courses through one of the universities. A lot of universities that I was actually just at a high school with this morning were saying that their programs typically start with fall of 10th grade. We do require that students have completed 9th grade, but you can start that summer after 9th grade. As long as you have a 3.0 GPA in high school, then you can begin. Sometimes those admissions requirements could be 2.5, but I think both Auburn and Alabama require a 3.0 GPA in high school. You can take up to 30 hours of credit with us on top of any AP credits. So think about all the different ways that you can use your high school time wisely and really kind of stack up those cost savings. That's also that up to 30 hours of credit. If you take 30 hours of credit, you're still considered a first-time freshman for purposes of undergraduate scholarships and admissions. So that's also really important that you can do all of these things and still be considered a freshman when it comes to scholarships when you go to actually apply to UA or other schools. Starting early, this is why it's in the freshman section. Starting early really allows students a lot of flexibility in terms of their extracurriculars. If they need to take time off based on a certain high school course load one semester, that's okay. You can take a course off. You do not have to continue. Once you're enrolled, you don't have to take a university course every semester. So you can make it work, if your student plays a fall sport like football, maybe fall is not the best time to add a college course, but then you can focus on also adding that in spring and summer. So starting early allows you time to have some flexibility for extracurriculars or other time commitments and things like that. And the more credits that you earn, again, the more benefit you will see from these things. So at UA, if you earn more than 17 early college credit hours by your senior year, and you have a 2.5 GPA with us at UA, you can be admitted to UA without an SAT or ACT test score. And there's several other benefits to it as well. So that's just a little bit about how dual enrollment can work with AP and why you might do one or the other.
Janine, would you mind answering a question for me and for our wonderful parents and family members? Taking college classes as a high school student can seem intimidating, right? And
Sure.
you don't want your student to take on more than they can chew, bite off more than they can chew is the phrase. Right. And you don't want them to do poorly. Can you talk a little bit about how a family would decide if that was the right choice for their student, if their student can handle it, and maybe how you all prepare students for that transition into taking those dual enrollment classes?
Sure. So the preparation and the supports can vary from program to program. I can't necessarily speak to other programs, but at early college, we have academic advisors and student success coordinators that are going to follow students through and check in and say, hey, I see maybe you missed an assignment. I've talked to your professor. They're a little worried. Can you tell me what's going on? And let's see what we can do to get you back on track. We want to make sure that what students are doing while they're in early college is not hindering their GPA success for when they do graduate high school. We want to make sure that students are leaving early college in a better place academically to say, yeah, I actually have a UA GPA already, and it's this. We put a lot of time and effort in making sure that our students are set up for academic success while they're in our program and then beyond. And that's very important for us. All of our students start with a college readiness course that already earns you 2 credit hours. And in it, we talk about how do you talk to your professors? How do you use the library? How do you do note taking? And things like that. Some very kind of detailed things that we think are really important for all students to understand before they come to college. And so we encourage all students to take that course. It's required for students to take that course in our program. So if nothing else, your student may really benefit from our college readiness course before they come to college as well.
And so these early college students would be taking both, could potentially take courses in person, but also if they're from around the state, could be taking early college courses online, correct?
We do. We have a lot of courses that are online. So they're convenient. They're available online 24/7. Your students can see the assignments and work ahead if needed to, if they know that they have another commitment coming up in a couple of weeks. There's a lot of ways that our students, especially students that I talk to, are able to find a way to make this work flexibly around what else they have going on. They also work with their academic advisors about what courses are you taking in high school right now. And so maybe this is a really time-intensive course. Maybe this is not the semester to take that course. Maybe we look at that again in the spring and things like that. So yes, you do not have to be in Tuscaloosa to take classes through early college. We actually have students nationwide taking online courses through our early college program.
Thank you for answering those questions for me.
And then briefly, I want to just touch on the testing before we move on, because it's very important. A lot of the scholarships and other opportunities that your students could be eligible for are going to be tied to the testing with the SAT and the ACT. I believe in this state, students take the ACT spring of their sophomore year, but you can start taking it much earlier. And the key part of that is that familiarity breeds experience, and that helps with these kinds of tests. It also helps to start maybe even being in prep courses and things of that nature, because that this test is a different thing than what they're used to in their everyday life in school. It has a lot of other factors, including like environment and like lighting and things like it's all like very, very minute details really can affect the student's score, and them having an understanding of that early on helps them down the line. A lot of the big name scholarships start with at least a 30 on the ACT, or or closer to the 1600 on the SAT, and like with 1500 range on the SAT. And also around I want to touch on a little later, but then their junior year, they take the PSAT, and that actually puts them in consideration for National Merit Scholars. And if you know anything about that, National Merit Scholarship is like one of the highest ranking that a high school student can achieve. And our package, along with many other schools' packages, are closer to the concept of the full ride that most people are typically looking for. And so really just kind of have that emphasis in your students' minds as they're getting ready, especially at this time, start already thinking about standardized test scores and potentially registering for a test this spring, so they have some familiarity with it before they go into next year when they actually will be taking it with everyone else.
And so just
quick, I will add on to that briefly, if you don't mind. If your student has a lot of testing anxiety, if they get very nervous about tests, or they tend to have test scores that don't always reflect how well they think they studied for it. I had a friend who always, who was in that boat. It didn't matter if it was the SAT, an AP exam, or just an exam in our course. That is something to consider when you think about doing dual enrollment versus a lot of the AP courses, or even your ACT and SAT scores. If a whole semester's worth of work can also count towards your GPA versus that test that you took that one time, where there were a lot of different factors that could have impacted how well you were, how relaxed and confident you were that day. So that's something, families, to be considered if you know that that's something that your student struggles with.
I think that's a really good point. And these topics are all things that we do share with ninth grade freshman students. So when they come to campus, we're talking about early college dual enrollment, testing early, what their different options are for, taking APs and how they transfer, how those dual enrollment classes will transfer beyond UA or to UA, and just making sure that they do know that their options, and we're trying to get them ahead of the ball as much as possible. So these are all topics that we do consider with our freshmen, and we talk about them. We don't always talk about them, with us being the speakers. Sometimes we use students. Sometimes we use previously enrolled early college students. We have different students from all of the different colleges on campus who come in and speak with them. So sometimes just hearing it from someone who has just gone through the process is really relatable for them, especially some of the younger freshmen. So those are just a few of the topics that we cover, but we do want to move into sophomore year. So when students come to campus their sophomore year, obviously we still have an emphasis on preparing early and testing and admissions, and we talk about making sure our grades are still looking good. We talk about making sure we're still involved in extracurriculars, and we're preparing in ways like that. But we do give them a different taste of campus. So, for example, when they come as freshmen, we're really doing that broad overview. So, what is some of that lingo? How are ways that they should be starting to prepare to get early? But we know that as our high school students stay in high school, they become a little bit more confident. They start to learn a little bit more. So we do give them some more fun learning opportunities while they come to campus as sophomores. And so one of the things that we've heard from students that they really enjoy looking at is the different residential halls. So on campus, we take them inside the residential halls. They get to see inside the dorms, inside the common spaces. What does the bathroom situation look like? These are also all resources that you can tour the different dorms online. I'm pretty sure we have that available for all the different options. So whether it be private dorms that are, in a private room in a suite style. So you might have a few suite mates, but you have your own room, and maybe you share a bathroom with one other person, versus your traditional style residence hall where you are sharing a room with another person and everyone is sharing a bathroom on the floor, a large bathroom, obviously. But those are some of the things that as high school students become sophomores and they've thought about college a little bit more. They thought about what they're going to be doing after high school a little bit more. We do share this information with them and show them what those spaces look like. We also do talk about the student organizations on campus. So we have our Division of Student Life, where we house a number of different programs. But we really do want students to know that they can continue to be connected to those extracurriculars that they were connected to in high school that they are passionate about or they really enjoy doing. And it just might be through a different vessel. But I think that it also is a really good opportunity to share with students why they need to continue to stay involved during high school. When we look at scholarships and awarding scholarships, we do look at their involvement during high school. So, whether that be leadership opportunities, sports, volunteering, some of those things. But we also let them know about ways that they can continue those once they come to campus. And so, we have everything from sports clubs that are just for fun. You might be playing flag football at 9:00 at night on the quad, or no, you're definitely not playing on the quad, on the rec fields, but you could also have something that is maybe more competitive, all the way to some of our academic societies that they can join. And so Kim's office is actually housed in Student Life. So I would love if Kim, if you want to tell a little bit more about how you all connect with the parents and families through your division.
Yeah. We start right away with parent and family orientation that's hosted through our office. And we also coordinate all communication with parents and family members through your student's entire experience. And so through our website, which is parents.ua.edu, you can absolutely go check it out. Look at what we offer for as far as orientation is concerned, as far as other programming. connections that we facilitate for families to get to know other families. We are looking forward to hosting Family Weekend just next week, not this weekend, but next weekend. And so as you are looking at other institutions, I do encourage you to also look to see how they communicate with parents and family members. How do they keep you in the loop? Because we know that familial support is critical for student success. We know that the students who have families who know the resources on campus that they can point students to, those students are going to be more likely to succeed on campus. And so we want to make sure that we are informing parents and family members, because likely you've been the expert in your students' educational experience so far, and students, it's hard to break that. And we don't necessarily want to. We just want it to look a little bit different. And so your student is still going to call you when they need help, no matter where they go to school, when they hit those bumps in the road. And so our office, just like parent and family program offices on many different campuses, really do support parents and family members to make sure that they have the accurate information in order to best support their student. We happen to be housed in Student Life, and so that gives us access to lots of different ways that students can get involved, can be successful on campus. And so we put that information out to parents and family members so that those parents and family members can encourage their student to abide by deadlines, to get involved, to take advantage of all that the university offers, to get the support and help that they might need on campus through resources like the Student Health Center, or through the Counseling Center, or through our Women and Gender Resource Center, or through the Career Center. Whatever a student might need, we want to make sure that parents and family members know about those resources. And so that is really what our office does. We are glad to be in Student Life because it puts us right close to many of the different areas that parents and family members may be less familiar with, because it's a different structure than what they were familiar with when their student was in the K-12 system. But it allows us to make sure that parents and family members are in the know, if you will.
And before we move off of this, I wanted to just touch on something that Daniela brought up as far as being active while you're in high school. That actually does matter when it comes to admissions, especially as of right now, particularly with UA. We are looking at a more holistic approach, and with that, we are looking intently on how active students are while they're in school. So I understand that some of your schools might not offer all the opportunities that others do and things of that nature, but the students still need to be active somehow, even in the community, doing community service, giving back, volunteering, whatever the case may be. We're looking for, and a lot of universities now are looking for a more balanced student, a student that can come in and we can have confidence no matter what the testing says or whatever the case may be. If the GPA is strong and they're showing that they have a good balance between student, like being a student as well as being an active member of their community, that is encouraging to us on the admission side to say that they can come in and be successful. And so to that tune as well, we have these organizations as well, so students can not only continue the good work that they have been doing while they're in high school, but also expand to other opportunities that maybe they did not realize were available until they got to college.
I also think in the same way that universities are looking for a well-rounded student, so are employers. And employers want to know how students have spent their time when they weren't in class. They want to know what they learned from those experiences. And so a lot of if it's not a matter of helping students succeed, the other pieces that are involved with student life are ways for students to explore new interests, to get to know themselves better, to build some new skills, because not only are students attending events, but students are also planning those events. Not only are they attending the meetings, but they are hosting the meetings, they're planning the meetings, they're creating the agenda, they're planning the logistics. And so all of those transferable skills, they're communicating with their organization members, can all be preparation for them in the workforce down the line. They're working with people who are coming from different backgrounds as them, or who have different viewpoints or perspectives. And so we want to make sure that in the same way we are hoping that students come to the university well-rounded, that they are leaving having a well-rounded experience at the university, no matter where they attend. And so making sure that students are very intentional and thoughtful about how they get involved, and making sure that they are choosing a campus or a university that will help foster that growth and development within them. Making sure that there's something that they're already excited about getting involved in before they even set foot on campus is really helpful.
And so when we present these different programs and resources and options to the students, we do let them know that, these are ways that you can be involved as a student at the University of Alabama. But even if you're thinking that you might wind up somewhere else, these are programs and resources and opportunities that you should be asking about anywhere that you go. So if you know that you really want to be involved in maybe student government, start asking those questions. What sort of resources are there for me to be involved in this on this campus? But we do want to make sure that students do find a way to channel that passion and grow that skill set so they can use it beyond college. And that's really what we focus on for our sophomores. When students come to campus as a junior, we really start to hone in on the academics. And something that we found when we first started this program and as it's evolved is most high school students change what they want to do and change what they want to major in and change their academic interests over the course of 4 years. And they will even continue to change those interests once they get to high school, once they get to college. So we kind of stopped asking that question to the freshmen and sophomores. We will give them opportunities to meet with different college recruiters, but they really aren't in-depth sessions that are focused on programs of study or classes or, curriculum or things like that. But once students come to Vision Days as a junior, we really do put an emphasis on finding what they're interested in, what that academic piece is that they think they might want to study, and introducing them to student ambassadors, introducing them to different counselors from those different colleges, introducing them to professors from those different colleges. And even if they still, are on the fence or they're not sure, we, like Kim was saying, we do partner really closely with our career center. So we might not be able to put the perfect college fit that they're going to apply for and get into, but we can find a pretty good connection based on what their career interest is or what they think their dream job might be. And when you start to dive into the nuts and bolts of these different colleges and programs of studies, we could go into depth. There's so much information from each of them. And I know that we would do it injustice if we didn't let them speak for themselves. But these are all resources that universities and different institutions have online. So, for example, if your student knows that they are interested in engineering, I would say one of those first steps is getting online and finding out what sort of engineering programs are available at that school. We have a really large and competitive engineering school. So we have everything from aerospace to construction to mechanical, and it goes on and on. But, if you're looking at maybe a smaller school or somewhere that might not have that same focus on, science, then there might not be as many different options for engineering. So just making sure that as your student begins to find that academic interest, that the pairing is starting sooner rather than later, because there's nothing worse than, getting onto campus and then realizing, well, I thought that I was going to, be an architect, and maybe that might not be an opportunity or an option.
I think it's really important that we make it clear that changing your major is very normal. It can sound like it's because the student is flaky or uncommitted, but it can be for a lot of different reasons. It can be they get here and start taking some of the core classes that they need for that major and decide they don't love it, or they take another class that's required for overall graduation, but maybe not for their major. And they find that they really are passionate about that area, or they get a job opportunity over the summer that changes their career path because now they want to pursue something else. So there's lots of different reasons why a student might change their major, and it's totally normal. It doesn't have to be scary. We do definitely encourage exploration and making sure that they're solidified in their major earlier on, because it does get a little bit harder and may add some time later in their 4 years on campus. But I do want to normalize that a little bit, and also recognize that it's completely acceptable and supported if your student comes into the university or into a university as an undecided major. Some institutions actually encourage it to the point where they don't let freshmen declare a major. Others may require that, but you might be able to be undecided within one of those colleges, like Crispus had mentioned. And so just keeping all of those options, I do encourage students and family members all the time, when you are looking to select an institution, don't just look for the one major your student thinks that they're going to major in today, but instead make sure that there's 4 or 5 major options that are available at that institution. So in the event that they decide that one major of their current major is not for them anymore, or they get into that later and they decide to move and within the same institution, you'd much rather have plans B, C, D, and E already available to you without having to transfer to another institution. Not that that's the worst case scenario either, but sometimes students would prefer to start and finish at the same institution. But if their plan D is not available on that original campus, perhaps that might require them to transfer to another institution. So Crispus might have other things to say about that.
No, you were spot on, but I just wanted to touch on the opportunities that might be available at the 2-year universities and junior colleges, as students can start there and then actually transfer into the University of Alabama, right into these majors. And if they are taking college classes right now at a local community college or what have you, just those credits will transfer. So they might come in as like a second semester sophomore, or even all the way up to their junior year. They earn their associate's degree while they're in high school. And so they should definitely feel encouraged to continue on their studies in that regard. But I also want to touch on more of the trade field as well, because I know a lot of students that I encounter they ask me about welding, they ask me about cosmetology, and those really are trades. Now they can come to University of Alabama and expound on those with like the School of Business if they want to have own their own hair salon or barbershop or something along those lines, or they want to expound on engineering and getting more into like metallurgical and things of that nature to expound on what they've already experienced. They have those opportunities as well. But if they already have earned those credits at that community college in those more trade center courses, they might also want to consider continuing on at that community college, earning their associate's degree or their certificate in that field, and then continuing on into the workforce from there. And they should feel encouraged to do so, because I can tell you right now, they make more money than me doing welding. So there's definitely an opportunity for them that they should be taking realistically if they are participating in those opportunities while they're in high school.
And something else that Kim had mentioned about when students begin to take, other classes that might not directly relate to their major, students are going to have opportunities to, for example, if you're a business student, yes, you will take different business courses, but you're also going to take different, courses in arts and science. And, if you are in honors college, you might take different topics in the honors college, or if you're doing a minor, you may take different courses across campus. And through those experiences, like she said, it is not uncommon for students to find different interests. So for example, just speaking from experience, I did all of my degrees are in kinesiology. So sports science and teaching sport. and teaching movement. And now I work in community affairs. Why? Because I found community engagement and I found community-based programs. And that was a niche that I really, really grew to love. And I would have never taken courses like that throughout my undergrad, but I did start to take courses like that towards the end and through my master's, and I made that transition. But I also wanted to touch on the different opportunities that all of or a lot of these colleges and programs offer outside of traditional classes. So, students will have classes where they're sitting in classrooms and it's a traditional lecture like you see on TV, but we also do labs. There are field experiences, there are opportunities for co-ops, there are opportunities for internships, there are study abroad opportunities, and there are a lot of different ways that your student can get different experiences that are tied to their major and tied to their program that are just outside of the classroom. So, maybe that's something that they start doing as a sophomore or a junior, and that's really how they narrow in on, what sort of career they want or what sort of degree they're working to, because they're finding that niche through those unique experiences. But like I said, these are all things that we do share with our juniors when they come to campus. We connect them with the different people who work in those exact colleges, and all of the students always have amazing questions. I'm always super blown away by them. They're asking about double majoring and minors and getting into the honors college, and it really is great to hear them share what their passions and interests are as juniors in high schools. But making those connections on what they can do is what I think is really special. And like we mentioned, even if it's not UA and it's transferring or coming from a 2-year, there are options. It's just getting students encouraged and confident in asking questions that lead them to find the answers that are going to fit. So like Kim said, having that list of, okay, what are some of those 5 majors that I might be interested in if number 1 and number 2 go south, but being able to ask questions about them and getting that necessary information. So we are going to bounce to the seniors, and we really wanted to make sure that senior parents, we were giving you the need to know information that is critical for right now. There are a lot of timelines coming up with our seniors, and we could have probably done a whole session on this, but we didn't want you to be lost in what your student might have already gone through with us at Vision Days. So if they have been joining us for all 4 years, that is everything that they've learned since they were a 9th grader. But I'm going to let Crispus cover that really important need to know info for our senior parents.
All right, yeah. So this is where my expertise comes in with the admissions portion. Really and truly, most universities have already opened up their applications for next fall, and so your students should already have an idea about where they want to apply, if they've applied, what they need in order to apply, all those good things. And just for general information, when we talk about their GPA on their transcript, we are looking strictly at their 9th through 11th grade years. Now, they improve their GPA or they are taking very specific courses here in the fall that could clear up any course requirements that a school might be looking for. You can send in an updated one, going into the spring semester. But more than anything else, we're looking strictly at their GPA as pertains to their courses and the coursework, and then their test score if they are applying with that. Some schools are offering a test optional policy. We are one of those. It began during the pandemic, and now we are also allowing it to happen for this class of students as well. And so students should just be encouraged with that they can still apply no matter what their test scores are if they have a strong GPA. And as I mentioned before, have been active to a certain degree. That goes a long way with those test optional policies that us and many other institutions are using at this time. Moving forward, October 1st is the FAFSA opening day. And so the FAFSA is a federal aid, I lose what the acronym stands for, but the Federal Financial Student Aid Application is what the FAFSA is for. And that's for any loans and grants that come from the government are done through the FAFSA. Now, there are also opportunities for private loans and things of that nature as well from this information, and that will all be included in your full financial aid package when you do receive that, and that you see our full package comes out in March. And so there is a benefit to applying early. The earlier that you get your information in, the more likely you are to get those grants and loans that may be available for your students, because money does dry up. Keep in mind, it's not just your student, not just your student school that or the state that's applying, it is the entire country all applying for these loans and grants. So money is available, but it is not infinite. And so being abreast of things and being on top of the financial situation, especially with this application, is imperative. Students should also have done their research to understand if their university or college that they're applying to requires the FAFSA for admission. UA does not, but that is not the same thing across the board. Now, the housing application opening day is more so pertaining to our university. Once students have been officially admitted, we have already started to admit students as of last week. And so if your students have applied already, just ensure that the transcript at least is in, their applying as optional, or both the transcript and test scores are in if they have if they're applying with it. And so if they have been admitted starting October 1st, they'll be able to start submitting their housing applications. And so for us and for other universities that might have a deadline or application of this type, is more than likely seed-based. So the earlier that you get your housing application in, the more likely you are to get your first choice as far as a residence hall is concerned. As far as, and for our housing process, students can actually pick the residence hall that they want to live in and the room that they want to have if they submit their housing application between October 1st and, as you see on the screen, February 1st. So between that timeline, students get to pick both the roommate and the residence hall that they want to stay in around the 1st of May. As you see on the bottom over there, housing selection is around that time. Moving forward, December 1st is also the FAFSA priority deadline. So if you want, that's why I was saying about applying early, and then making sure you have included every single school that students are that your students is interested in, so that they have your up-to-date financial aid application. January 15th for us this year is going to be our deadline for competitive scholarship consideration. Now, this year is a little different. If your students applying to UA, our scholarship application is a part of our actual admissions application. Some of the fill-in-the-blank cognitive questions are going to be used for both admissions purposes, especially for test optional, as well as for scholarship purposes when that review period does come. And so that's also where the emphasis is, as far as having a detailed log of what your students' activities are. That's what differentiates your application from another student that did not put as much information. It's very easy to just type, oh, I was involved in the Beta Club, I played soccer, and I volunteered in my church, versus students saying, through the Beta Club, I did XYZ and committed X amount of hours. As far on soccer, I practiced X amount of hours per week. As far as volunteering, I was volunteering at the nursing home and I did this amount of hours. And these are all things I did with the elderly while I was there. And that's the difference between a okay scholarship application, to where you will only get something very minor as far as the competitive awards are concerned, and a great application that might be able to get you full tuition. And that's really where that January 15th deadline comes into play. And so if your students are involved this fall, we don't encourage you to delay your application, because we actually do have periods based upon when students apply, when our scholarship review is happening. So there is no downside to applying early. We understand that if a student applied prior to October 1st, I think the first round is October 15th. So they applied prior to then, we understand that they might not have all the hours or all the senior accolades that they might have now. So they apply early on, they might not have put that they're president of a club or whatever on their application. We take that into consideration for students who applied in that time frame. And there are two others built into this timeline that we have. And so there really is no downside to applying, but the deadline for sure for competitive scholarship consideration is January 15th. So your application should be in by then. Once a student has applied, been admitted, paid their freshman enrollment deposit, submitted their housing application. I forgot to mention there's a freshman enrollment deposit before the housing application. I apologize. Once you submit that, the deposit and the housing application, you will then move into the last stage, which is orientation. But that's where the February 1st deadline comes back into play about getting everything in by then. And then May, as I said before, is when automatic merit test scores it's a deadline for anything as far as pertaining to improving their merit-based scholarship. We will be accepting scores all the way through then. So they apply right now with what the GPA that they have, and let's say like a 26 on the ACT, but they take it again and get a 28, a 29. We adjust their scholarship accordingly. So we do still encourage our students to submit as many scores as possible if they are improving. The National Merit Finalist deadline, that's a deadline to choose, and that's where that PSAT test comes in. Yes, they take it in the spring of their junior year, but it is pertaining to how they finish as far as a national merit consideration is concerned. So there's a finalist and a semifinalist. Both have very specific scholarship packages with us and with other universities. And so there's also some that students should be taken seriously when that time comes. Again, the roommate selection is around that time, and then May 1st is the official National Decision Day.
We're going to let Christmas take a deep breath. So that's all starting now. So if you're a senior parent, you should also take a deep breath. No, we are here to support you. So if you have questions about that, if you are curious about the timeline, if there were things in there that, you might have heard differently, please keep in mind that this does change every single year. So for example, scholarship awarding is different this year than it's been in the past. The FAFSA does always open on October 1st. That doesn't change. But there are some things that might be different than previous years. So if you have questions or you're just not sure, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. There are a few different things that Krista said that I just want to touch on. We talked about applying. There are application waivers in place and that your students can participate in to apply for free. And I think it also waives what that enrollment deposit. Is that correct, Crispus?
Yes. If your student submits a fee waiver, and the criteria is a few different options, but the main ones are free reduced lunch, or they qualify for the ACT's fee waiver, or any of the other criteria. We waive the application fee, the fresh enrollment deposit, and the refundable portion of the housing deposit. So students only pay around $35 for housing was application.
So if you have questions about that, you can reach out to either one of us or your student's high school counselor. They are normally also very familiar with that. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. We also talked a little bit about housing at Alabama, and I know at some other universities, housing does get competitive. So if there is a dorm or a residence hall that that your student wants to be in, for example, they do not want to share a room, or there's just, one that's closer to campus, closer to their buildings that they want to be in, the sooner that housing information can get completed, the more likely they'll be able to select their housing. Is that right, Crispus? Ish?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think my connection went out for a little bit, and I kind of missed the bulk of what you said.
Oh, that's okay. You made a really crazy face, and I was like, I might be telling a lie right now.
No, my bad.
Daniela, you have two housing veterans on the call right now. So yes, what you said is correct, but I would also caution you parents that their housing situation may not look exactly the way they have it built in their head, and your student can still have a fantastic first year and still have a great roommate experience, even if they don't know their roommates. My most favorite roommates are the ones that I didn't already have expectations or friendships with beforehand. I can go on and on about that, but please, parents, let's try and be flexible and fluid about those housing expectations and dreams and how much we build that up, because you can have a lot of great experiences, even if your housing situation doesn't work out the way you had hoped and dreamed.
I think that touches on something that we'll talk about in 2 weeks of some of the questions to ask when you go visit a campus, specifically as it relates to housing. How are housing assignments made? Does your student play a role in selecting their housing, or is that something that's assigned depending on where they go, what campus they end up on, what are the different housing options? On our campus, we offer suite style, traditional style, and then something in the middle, as well as apartment style. And so just knowing what different housing opportunities are available, how our roommates either matched or just selected, or what that looks like. So again, this is a spoiler for 2 weeks from now, but that is a set of great questions to keep in the back of your mind when you are visiting those different college campuses. I also just wanted to go back just a hair for a hot second and acknowledge that every campus does their fee waiver process a little bit differently. And so what was described is how we do our fee waiver process. But if you think that potentially you have a need for fee waivers, and that's application fee for admission purposes, that's housing application fee, that is freshman enrollment deposit, if that is something that the other campuses that you're looking at include, orientation fee fees as well. All of those things may have the potential for having waivers or reductions or deferment. And when I say deferment, I mean it says you can register for orientation right now. We are going to put that charge on your student's account for later down the line when their financial aid hits, or when their scholarship hits, or something like that. So there's lots of different things. I know in our office, we have an orientation fee waiver request process for parents and family members who are wanting to attend parent and family orientation. They just have to request that. We then work with financial aid to make sure that they meet the criteria. But you just want to be aware of that and ask your admissions officer on whatever campus you are going through that process with, what their process looks like, because we don't want you to miss out on those opportunities if you're eligible.
Awesome. So we got 2 more slides. Remember, as if you have questions, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat, and we can knock them out in real time. If you are joining us later, you can still put those in the chat and we will make sure that we get to you. I know that we just threw out a term. Kim said deferred, and that is one of our, we have some senior specific terms that we wanted to make sure that you guys knew. And like we mentioned, we have our own processes at UA, but every school does it different. And so Christmas, if you could just talk a little bit about early action, early admission, rolling admission, deferred admission, and kind of what those might mean, and knowing that you might hear those at different places and what it means.
Absolutely. So early action, as it says right there, is you apply early, but there is no commitment tied with that application. They typically go in comparison with early admission, or early decision is the other term for it. And that really, and it's not legally binding, but it is implied that because you applied by this deadline, that if you are accepted, you are going to commit and then go further in the enrollment process. And so just kind of those are really the 2 main ones when it comes to early things. And early action is really the one you want to utilize a little bit more, because typically they're like fee waivers, things like that might be a part of applying early in a certain window for certain schools. Being considered for scholarships might be a part of that as well. So really, and that really just goes back into looking into the details of every school's admissions requirements or policies that they have, depending on what your student is interested in, and just knowing when you see that language, this is what it means, and that's what this portion is about. I saw Kim come on.
Yeah, I did. Now, Christmas, UA, because we are experts in our own institution, we do not have early action, early admission, or early decision, correct?
Correct. We are the thing that we have is actually rolling admission. And so we don't really have a functional application deadline now. The application does close pretty much around the time classes start for the next year. But we have deadlines, we have orientation. We have other things that go on once students are admitted that are imperative and keep you going through the enrollment process. And and as we've been reiterating, the earlier the better. And so, yes, you could potentially wait until July of next year to apply, get
Don't
your
do that.
transcript and test scores, and be admitted. Go through orientation, but you will not have any scholarship money. You will be missing out on any housing opportunities that you just kind of whatever's available, that's what you got. Those kind of things go into play. And so rolling admission can be beneficial to a certain degree, but you do want to still be abreast of the deadlines that are tied to that.
So while we are encouraging people to take action early, that is not in the same way that early action as we are defining it right here works. We just
Absolutely.
want you to go ahead, and there's no reason to not apply early, but there is no commitment or requirement when you do that. I just wanted to make that distinction
for us,
between the two.
Yeah. For us, it's really just being able to submit your deposits earlier and things of that nature, and being first in line for housing and other opportunities that come after admission. And then deferred admission really happens when students want to take maybe a gap year, gap semester, wherein you defer your admission for that year, or either or, and then you would just start at that time. A part of that is communicating with the university or college's scholarship department to ensure that any awards that your student received will carry over to that next year in their value, or whatever will be equal if the scholarships change. The same thing for community scholarships. If they were tied to that year, your student graduated, and just ensure that either that the check that they wrote out to you or the funds that they were going to send to the school will be available when your student does matriculate in after their gap.
I did also want to mention, sometimes not only do you hear about deferred admission when, again, you are not going in the original term that a student has been admitted in, but perhaps deferring to the spring instead of starting the fall, or to the following fall. But you also sometimes might hear about a deferred decision. And so when a student applies, they can either be admitted and accepted and get that decision. They can be denied admission. So that is one of the options. Or sometimes institutions will use the deferred decision language in order to say, you know what, we aren't ready to make a decision quite yet about your student's application, or about your application if you are the student. We are going to defer and wait until getting your full fall grades, or getting your next test score, or something like that. We just want to make sure we have a little bit more information before we make that decision. And so I just want to make sure that we also include the fact that deferred admission is one thing, but deferred decision is another.
Absolutely.
Thanks for letting me interject.
Oh yeah, of course. And for us, you can actually see that in your application portal. If your student has applied and we need an updated test score, we need a improved transcript, or maybe the transcript was incomplete because you transferred school or something along those lines, that will be notated in the application portal that you'll be able to log into and see what else we need to complete your student's application and get them a decision. And then moving on.
I was going to say really quick, Crispus, when all of these decisions are being made, like Crispus said, for UA, we update a portal online, and that's where the information can be found. But every institution is going to do it differently. So, we assign students Crimson emails, and then those Crimson emails, they have a campus-wide ID, and that, we start communicating in that way. Some schools might still do mailers. I'm not super familiar. I'm sure that some do, but just making sure that once you apply, you're keeping it on your radar. We have, sometimes what happens is students, they lose track of the steps and they forget what they need to accept, or they forget what they need to do to further the process. So just making sure that you're keeping an eye on it. And again, if questions come up, for example, let's say you saw a deferred decision for your student. Okay, are they looking for you to turn in something else? What is the deadline on that? When does that need to be submitted by? How does it need to be submitted by? Because when it's moving through that admissions process, like we mentioned earlier, is always better. So if you miss a deadline or something like that, it's going to be a lot harder to advocate for your student. But just making sure that that information is getting in as soon as possible.
And we really do encourage you to, email, call, because that might be the school's policy. Like I said, we have a portal. Another school, they might just expect you to call if you haven't heard anything. So really just kind of making sure you're staying on top of it as much as possible. And then another thing with deferred admission, I wanted to also speak about military. If your student is going into the military and they still apply and get accepted, they obviously have to go to basic training at some point, whether that be the spring or next fall. This is also an area where deferred admission can work for your student, because they will be able to use their benefits and things like that they have from joining the military. They are going right into school and then be able to start, say a year or semester later, depending on what their basic training schedule looks like. This is their option as well.
I know that we have just encouraged you as a parent and family member to stay on top of these processes and procedures, but I would be remiss if I did not interject and say, your student should be doing these applications. They should be completing the applications at every step. So the admissions application, the scholarship application, the housing application, all of those things, because while you likely know your student very, very well, they need to be the ones to answer those questions, because they're going to be the one who we are making the decision on whether or not they're going to be admitted, or any institution is. And so definitely staying on top of the processes is key, but making sure that your student is in the lead in those processes and procedures, because that is going to set them up for better opportunities for success once they come to a college or a university, as opposed to you doing that for them. And I know they're busy, I get it, but they still need to do it for themselves. We need to make sure that they are answering the questions in the way that is true to themselves, and not what they think that how you want them to answer those questions, because they are not going to be as invested if they are going to an institution because their family member made the application for them and they didn't really have anything to do with it. So I just couldn't let it go. I'm so sorry, but I had to pipe in.
I understand you're spot on. And then moving us forward, test optional, I mentioned it before, because we have a test optional policy at this time. Other institutions might be doing one as well, but essentially you will be able to apply for sure admissions without the need for a standardized test score, that's the ACT or the SAT. Now for us, you have the option to send in a test score for scholarship, merit-based scholarship purposes, if you so choose. If you take the score, you like your score, you see what you might be able to get with that score, or you compare it to what you might be able to receive, what you think you might be able to receive based upon the competitive scholarship awards, any of those things. But you have those options available to you. And then but definitely look into whether or not that affects scholarship consideration. We have competitive awards that students can still be considered for, but other institutions might only be awarding merit-based scholarships that include the test score. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. And then conditional acceptance, last but not least, is pretty much when a student has been accepted to a university, but we want them to go through some other program, or this can even fall into that deferred acceptance as well. We want to see improved test scores, improved GPA, what have you. But essentially for us, that means that a student likely has the skill set in order to be able to achieve, have success here at the university, but might be lacking in another area. And so with that, we have what we call the Crimson Edge program. And while it's set up to where students have a lot more access to tutoring services, as well as a lighter workload their freshman year. And hearing that, I know some parents actually want their students to be in it who have been regular admits, but it is a decision that we make on our end when we evaluate your student. And then, and for sure this year, there are probably a lot more of those, given our holistic approach, recognizing that there might be no external factors that affected your students' test scores, affected their GPA, but we see that they are a hard worker, they're diligent, diligent, they have a good work ethic, things of that nature. And so we would admit them through that programs to get them that essentially runway to come in, take a little easier, have a little more access to help if they should so need it, and then be able to go in and then continue on in their curriculum as any other student.
Again, conditional acceptance can look a lot of different ways on a lot of different campuses. Crispus just mentioned how it looks on our campus at UA. However, it could also look like your student is admitted, but they need to start and take some classes over the summer on campus to get acclimated, get 2 classes under their belt, get connected with some of the resources while things are not necessarily as full force as what they would be in the fall. And then continue on as and they're a regular student in the summer, but they're just taking fewer classes to get their feet wet and get a good foundation before the fall semester. Other conditions may be to start in January instead of February. Other conditions might be to take specific classes or to have a specific advisor or something like that. So again, Crispus just mentioned what conditional acceptance looks like on our campus, but it can look like a lot of different things on various campuses.
And so those are all terms that as you go through this application process and admissions process, you might hear come up. So we just want to make sure that you are aware of them. And again, I know we've said this multiple times, but we are here to answer questions. So if something looks different than what we said, or you're not really sure how this applies to what we said, please ask. We are going to kind of leave you with a teaser here. So I know that we talked a little bit about financial aid. We talked a little bit about scholarship deadlines. We didn't go into a lot of depth on those awards and that process and some of that terminology. But we do want to make sure that you and your students are prepared to find the best way for your family to afford college. And there are so many different resources and programs that are available now for students and for all different types of students. So we want to make sure that you're able to find that good fit. So we are going to have speakers next week, September 21st at 6 p.m. We'll be here on the same place, YouTube Live, but we will be talking about scholarships. We have a speaker from our Alabama Scholarship Alumni Program. And scholarships are all awards that do not have to be repaid. So every scholarship department or division at different universities or institutions will look different. But more often than not, that is just free money to go towards your students' education. Financial aid that is coming from the government, it is traditionally loaned, and there might be some sort of repayment. It just depends on what that looks like. So like I mentioned, there are a lot of different programs, and we will have a speaker also from financial aid who can give us a breakdown and go into all of that different terminology. If you want to get a head start, you can check out the FAFSA website. There is a lot of interesting information there. But with that October 1st deadline coming up, we wanted to make sure that you are prepared and feel confident and ready to fill out that application. And like we mentioned, our third and final session is going to be questions to ask while you're on campus, and what you should be looking at as a parent, as a guardian, as a family member while you're doing your campus tour. So that will be the following Tuesday on September 28th. So we have really covered a lot of ground when we were getting ready for this. I was like, I don't know if there's any way we could really speak for the full 90 minutes, but here we are. So I think, I have to thank my speakers for coming on after hours and really sharing their insights with you. Like Janine said, she works in early college now, but her and Kim have both done housing. So with all of our experiences across higher ed, I'm just happy that they were able to share those insights with you and ultimately help you deliver that information to your students. If there are topics that you are interested in, or you have questions about, or you would like us to hold a session on, please let us know, and we will put that on our agenda, and we will get the appropriate speakers and resources that we need to connect with you. After we post this, we're also going to update the description on YouTube, so you can kind of see what the bullet points are by time frame, and we'll kind of tag the resources in there as needed. But please feel free to share this with any other parents, counselors, teachers at your school who you think it could be used to go on, and be sure to be on. But I do appreciate everyone for joining us today. And Kim, any last thoughts?
Well, I just wanted to mention, we said if you have questions, let us know, but we didn't necessarily give you any contact information for that. So I do want to just make sure that you know that we will include email addresses down in the description, right down there. So not only will there be links for the different resources that we mentioned and where you can find the timelines and those types of things, but also you'll have a contact email address for undergraduate admissions, for community affairs when it comes to vision days, and for parent and family programs, and for early college, so that you can absolutely get those questions to the right people. So that was all I had. I just wanted to make sure that they knew where to go.
Yes, I appreciate that. Well, like we said, we thank you for joining us. We are excited that we finally have a way to connect with parents and families, especially of our students. We've really enjoyed meeting with your students for the last 3+ years now. So I'm sorry it took us so long to get to you all, but we are glad that we are here now. And we really want to be a resource for you all, just as much as we are for your students and for your counselors. So we are excited to get to know you and to meet and to connect and just serve as a resource for you. So thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your evening, day, week, wherever you might be, and we will see you all later.